Time for some constructors. This I have a big note saying see section 6. I prefer to write the constructors up at the top of the class right under the properties as the first set of methods that you see, and that's a pretty common standard. So I'm going to move this comment up there, and then we'll take a look at section 6 very briefly to see exactly what we have to do. So now if I didn't know, if I were just learning how to write constructor methods and wanted to review, that's why we have the constructor methods section that says specifically what we want the constructors to look like. Boy, here's an easy one. JavaDoc right there. Let's use that for the initializing constructor. And then we have a default constructor as well. So I would expect that you would read those instructions fairly carefully. Missed it, param overname. So that you're familiar and comfortable with what's required in that section. I tend to zip along in these videos so that we don't take up too much time and bandwidth on the videos, assuming that you have already done some reading. There's the initializing constructor. Let me write the default constructor using this one as a guide. That will take no parameters. Constructors, always the same name as the class. That's what makes them special, so we know, and they're public, unless you don't want somebody to ever be able to call a certain constructor, but you'll get to that in the glorious future of your life as a programmer. For now, they're public, and they're just called the name of the class. There's no return type in here because they're kind of returning the class as well as, so it's a special, very weird looking method with no return type. And the default constructor has no parameters. We'll initialize each property to a default value. That's what the default constructor does. So init properties to default values. Very light dog. No owner. This could be anything, and actually I prefer to not even put these in as strings. I would put a string, a constant right up here for none and no owner, but we'll just forge ahead for now. Again, another thing that you can learn in the glorious future. Just because I don't like putting hard-coded strings into methods if I can avoid it. Okay, here's the initializing constructor. Again, another public one, another one with no return type. Weird. But we can see here that we have 4 parameters. Name, breed, weight, and owner name, which makes sense because we have 4 properties. So I will list them here. So this means that somebody's calling this method with actual values, and all we have to do is just set each property to its applicable value. This.name equals name. The only reason I have to say this.name is because this is also named name, and so there would be no way to figure out what I meant if I were to say this. This doesn't make any sense. Do I want to set this equal to itself? What? So this is the way that I make it clear. If I had named this something else besides name, I would not have to say this.name. It would figure it out. But because they're named exactly the same thing, and it's pretty common for that to happen, if you have a good variable name, you probably are going to use it in both places. That's all the default and initializing constructors have to do. So we are now finished with the constructor section.